They say love can conquer anything. But what if the one you love isn't human? What if the vows you take are not just until death, but for eternity, even beyond this world? This is the chilling story of Nyah, a woman whose desperate desire for love led her into the arms of something unholy, something that lurked between the realms of the living and the dead. She thought she had found her soulmate, but she had no idea what she had truly married. What happened to Nyah next will send shivers down your spine. It all began in a quiet village deep in West Africa, where whispers of forbidden unions were told in hushed voices. Nyah was a young woman, known for her beauty and kindness, but her heart was heavy with loneliness. She had suffered heartbreak after heartbreak. No man ever stayed. The village women mocked her misfortune, whispering that she was cursed. Then, one night, an old woman appeared at her door. Mama Kesia, a mysterious elder known for her knowledge of ancient spirits. "You seek love that will never betray you?" the old woman asked, her voice like the rustling of dry leaves. Nyah hesitated, then nodded. "Then you must marry one who will never leave. But remember, once the bond is sealed, there is no turning back." Nyah, desperate to escape her loneliness, did not ask questions. She only wanted love. That night, Nyah followed Mama Kesia's forbidden ritual. She sat alone in her hut, lit a single black candle, and stood before her mirror. Then she spoke the name of her unknown husband 3 times. At first, nothing happened. But then, the air became thick, heavy, as if unseen eyes had filled the room. A chilling wind blew through the hut, despite the windows being shut. The candle flickered, then went out. A deep voice echoed from the shadows. "I have waited for you, Nyah." Nyah's heart pounded. She turned, but there was no one there. And yet, she could feel a presence. Watching, waiting. Then, slowly. The candle relit itself, but the flame was no longer orange. It was deep, blood red. Nyah stood frozen. Her breath came in shallow gasps. The air in the hut felt suffocating, as if unseen hands were pressing against her chest. She wanted to run, to scream. But her body wouldn't move. The deep voice spoke again. "Do not be afraid. You called for me, and now I am here." Nyah swallowed hard, forcing herself to speak. Who are you?" There was silence. Then a whisper, soft as the night breeze, yet carrying a weight older than time itself. "I am your husband." Nyah's hands trembled. This was madness. She had only wanted love, a man who would never leave. But this was something else entirely. "Show yourself," she whispered, her voice barely audible. For a moment there was no response. Then the candle snuffed out again. Darkness swallowed the room. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming closer. Nyah's heart pounded against her ribs. She could feel him now, his presence wrapping around her like cold mist. A sudden force brushed against her cheek like fingers made of air. She flinched, then a breath, warm and near, right beside her ear. "Look into the mirror." Nyah's blood turned to ice. There, standing behind her in the mirror, was a tall, shadowy figure. Its form was shifting, as if made of smoke and darkness. Its eyes, they glowed like embers in the night. She wanted to scream, to turn away, but she was paralyzed. Trapped in her own reflection, the figure lifted a hand, and though no one was physically there, she felt cold fingers stroke her hair. I have waited for you, Nyah, the voice whispered again. You are mine now. Nyah's heart pounded. She wanted to run. But how could you escape something that had no body? Something older than time itself? Something she had invited in? And then, just as suddenly as it came, the shadow vanished. The candle flickered, back to normal. The room was silent once more. Had she imagined it? Nyah exhaled shakily. But deep inside, she already knew the truth. She was no longer alone. Nyah sat frozen in her hut, her breath unsteady. The room was silent, but the air felt thick. Heavy. She wanted to believe it was a dream, that her mind was playing tricks on her. But she could still feel it, the lingering coldness where unseen fingers had touched her. The weight of his presence even in the emptiness. She glanced at the mirror again. Nothing. No shadow. No glowing eyes. But deep inside she knew. He was still there. Watching. Hours passed. Nyah curled up on her straw mat, forcing her eyes shut. She just needed sleep. She would wake up, and this would all be over. The room was still, silent, until... The door creaked open. Nyah's eyes shot open. She sat up, heart hammering, in her chest. The door swayed slightly, though there was no wind. The candle flickered. Something was inside the hut with her. Nyah's throat felt dry. She wanted to call out, but... to whom? She was alone. Or so she thought. Then from the darkness, she heard it. Breathing. Slow. Steady. Right beside her. Her body went rigid. She turned her head. But there was nothing. Yet, when she reached out into the empty space beside her, her fingers touched something. Not solid. Not air. Something in between. A shape. A presence. And before she could even react, it moved. The unseen form shifted, and suddenly, something pressed against her, warm, close, as if a body was lying beside her. Nyah gasped, scrambling backward. Who's there? Silence. Then, your husband. Terror gripped her. She wanted to run, to escape, but her body wouldn't move. The presence beside her stayed still, unmoving, watching. Then, slowly, she felt a hand touch hers, cold, feather-light, but undeniably real. Nyah yanked her hand away, her breath shaky. What do you want from me? A pause. Then the voice whispered, I am yours, and you are mine. A chill ran down Nyah's spine. This was no ordinary spirit. She had married something far more powerful and far more dangerous. Nyah sat frozen, her body stiff with fear. The voice had been clear, too real to be a dream. She wasn't alone. Something unseen lay beside her, breathing softly in the darkness. She squeezed her eyes shut, praying this nightmare would end. But when she opened them again, a burning sensation shot through her wrist. She gasped, jerking her arm away, only to see it. A mark had appeared on her skin, a dark, swirling pattern, glowing faintly in the candlelight. It hadn't been there before, and, worse, it was moving. Nyah's breath quickened. She rubbed at the mark, desperate to make it disappear. But it was part of her now. Branded, claimed. She turned sharply toward the empty space beside her. I never agreed to this, she whispered. A soft chuckle echoed. Through the hut. You called for me, Nyah. You made your vow. She shook her head. No, this isn't what I wanted. Silence, then a slow, chilling reply. It does not matter what you wanted. You are mine now. Nyah's stomach twisted. She had made a terrible mistake. Tears welled in her eyes. Please, let me go. The voice didn't answer right away. Instead, a cold, invisible force gently brushed against her cheek. Almost affectionate. Do not be afraid, my bride. I will never hurt you. Nyah flinched at the word. Bride? This wasn't just a spirit haunting her. This was a husband she had invited into her life, bound to her, forever. Nyah's breath caught in her throat. The mirror. It was writing to her. Her hands trembled. She couldn't stay here. She had to break this bond. She had to find Mama Kessia, the only one who might know how to undo this. Ignoring the voice still whispering. To her, Nyah grabbed a shawl and rushed out of the hut. The night air was cold against her skin, but she didn't care. She ran through the village, past the sleeping huts, past the silent trees, toward the only person who might save her. Nyah's feet pounded against the dirt path, her breath coming in sharp gasps. The village was silent, the only sound the rustling of trees and the distant call of an owl. She didn't stop. She couldn't. She had to reach Mama Kessia, the only one who could help. Mama Kessia's hut sat at the very edge of the village, surrounded by ancient baobab trees. Nyah banged on the door, her hands trembling. Please, open up. For a moment there was nothing, then a faint shuffle. The wooden door creaked open, revealing Mama Kessia's aged face, her dark eyes sharp with wisdom. She frowned. Child, why are you here at this hour? Nyah pushed inside, gasping for air. I need help. Something. Someone. Her words caught in her throat. Because, even here in the safety of Mama Kessia's hut, she felt him. Watching. Listening. The old woman studied Nyah closely. You have seen him, haven't you? Her voice was quiet, knowing. Nyah's eyes widened. You know. Mama Kessia sighed, motioning for Nyah to sit. Foolish child, she muttered. You played with things you do not understand. Nyah shook her head. I didn't mean to. I just wanted love. Someone who wouldn't leave me. The old woman's gaze darkened. And now... He never will, Nyah shivered. Please, tell me how to break this bond. Mama Kessia didn't answer immediately. Instead, she traced the dark markings on Nyah's wrist with her bony fingers. The symbol shifted under her touch. I have seen this before, she murmured. A spirit that takes a bride, a union that cannot be undone. Nyah's stomach twisted. But there must be a way. The old woman's expression was grim. There is only one way. Nyah leaned in, desperate. Tell me. Mama Kessia took a deep breath. You must resist him, deny him, no matter what he whispers, no matter how much he pleads. You must refuse him. Nyah swallowed. And if I don't? The old woman's eyes were haunted. Then, child, you will belong to him in this life and the next. A cold dread settled over Nyah. Deny him. Refuse him. But how could she fight something she could not see? Before she could ask another question, the hut grew unnaturally still. Mama Cassia stiffened. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, "He is here." The air in the hut grew thick, heavy, suffocating. Nyah could feel it. Him. He was here. Mama Cassia's wrinkled fingers gripped her wooden staff, her expression unreadable. "Do not speak to him," she whispered. "Do not answer. No matter what he says." Nyah's body trembled as she clutched her wrist, where the mark burned like fire. Then, the voice came. Low, smooth, right beside her ear. "Why do you run from me, my bride?" Nyah clenched her jaw, trying to ignore him. But his presence wrapped around her like a cold embrace. He laughed softly. "She fills your head with lies," he murmured. "You belong with me, Nyah." Mama Cassia's voice was sharp. "Resist him." Nyah squeezed her eyes shut. He wasn't real. He wasn't real. Then, a sudden force yanked her backward. She gasped, her body slamming against the wooden wall. Invisible hands pinned her down. The air in the hut turned ice cold. Mama Cassia began to chant, low rhythmic words in an ancient tongue. Nyah felt the grip on her loosen slightly, but the voice grew colder, darker. "You cannot take her from me, old woman." The room shook. The oil lamp shattered, plunging them into darkness. And then, a whisper against Nyah's neck. "You are mine." The darkness swallowed the hut. Nyah couldn't move. She couldn't see. But she felt him. A chilling breath against her skin, a presence wrapping around her. Then, Mama Cassia's voice, strong and commanding. "Be gone, spirit." A sharp, piercing scream filled the air. The force holding Nyah vanished. She collapsed to the floor, gasping for breath. Mama Cassia grabbed her wrist, eyes scanning the mark. It was fading, but not gone. "You must leave this village," Mama Cassia said. "Before it's too late." Nyah's breath caught. "Leave?" The old woman's face was grim. "He will not stop. As long as you are here, he will come for you." Nyah's heart pounded. Leave her home, her village? Where would she go? She turned toward Mama Cassia, shaking her head. "There must be another way." The old woman's eyes softened. "There isn't." A deep sense of dread settled in Nyah's chest. Then, in the darkness, the voice returned, soft, amused. "You can run, my love, but you will never escape me." Nyah's breath was unsteady. Run away? Leave everything behind, but if she stayed, would she become his forever? Mama Cassia studied her with piercing eyes. "You don't have much time." Nyah took a shaky breath. "Where do I go?" The old woman slowly raised a finger, pointing beyond the village. "Across the forest, there is a place where he cannot follow you." Nyah's heart pounded. The forest? The place where no one returns from? Nyah clenched her fists. A war raged inside her. If I run, will he still find me? Mama Cassia sighed. He might. But this is your only hope. What hope? The old woman's voice dropped to a whisper. There is an ancient temple deep within the forest. Inside you will find something that can sever your bond with him. Nyah's veins turned to ice. Nyah swallowed hard. I have to go. Mama Cassia gripped her wrist tightly. Once the night falls, do not stop. No matter what you hear, do not look back. And whatever happens, return before dawn. Nyah nodded and turned toward the door. But just as she stepped outside, A breath colder than death brushed against her neck. And then, the voice came again. "Don't go, Nyah. You belong to me." Nyah whipped around, but there was nothing there, just a faint, lingering chuckle floating in the bust wind. She was leaving. But could she ever truly escape? Nyah stepped into the forest, the air thick and unnatural. Darkness swallowed everything. The trees stood tall and lifeless, their branches stretching out like claws. She inhaled sharply. If she wanted to survive, she couldn't stop moving. But then, a branch snapped. Something was here. Nyah clenched her fists. "Who's there?" she whispered. A silence, then a breath. A deep, slow breath from behind a nearby tree. Nyah's heart pounded. Was it him? Had he followed her here? Nyah forced herself to move faster. She had to keep going. But suddenly, the ground trembled, like something beneath it was alive. She looked down. A long blackened finger was emerging from the soil, reaching for her ankle. Nyah gasped and jumped back, but the hand vanished into the dirt. Still, she could feel it, watching, smiling. And then, the voice returned. "My bride. Stop this. Come back to me." Nyah shook her head violently. "No, but this time," he laughed. "Let's see how long you can resist me." And at that moment, the entire forest came to life. The trees groaned and twisted, as if whispering a warning. The ground pulsed beneath her feet. She was no longer alone. Nyah's legs trembled as the forest moved around her. Leaves rustled without wind. Branches stretched, cracking like brittle bones. And beneath her feet, something stirred. She stepped forward, but the ground shifted. Nyah gasped as her foot sank into the earth. A hand. A cold, lifeless hand clamped around her ankle. She screamed and kicked. The hand tightened, a grip stronger than death. Then, a voice, smooth as silk. "You don't need to run, Nyah." Her breath hitched. The voice was inside her head now. She looked up. The trees were moving, bending toward her. They were whispering. Nyah forced herself to listen, and what she heard made her blood run cold. "He is here." Nyah clawed at the dirt, pulling herself free. She ran. Branches slicing at her arms, the whispers grew louder. "You are his. There is no escape. Turn back before he takes your soul." Nyah covered her ears. "Stop!" But the forest laughed, and then everything went silent. She stopped running. Something was ahead, a shadowy figure waiting, not human, not fully formed. Yet she knew. It was him. Nyah froze. The shadow stepped forward. With each movement, the trees shuddered as if bowing to its presence. "You came so far, my love." The voice was gentle, deceptive. Nyah's hand shook. "I am not your bride." It smiled. "You were always mine." Nyah clenched her fists. "I have a choice." It laughed softly. "You think so?" She took a step back. "The temple. It can break this curse." The figure tilted its head. "The temple is a myth." Nyah's stomach dropped. "Lies." It stepped closer, shadows reaching for her. "You will see." And then, Nyah ran. Nyah's heart pounded as she ran. The temple. It had to be real. But the whispers followed her. "You cannot run from fate. Turn back." She kept going. Then, light. A faint glow beyond the trees. Her one chance. She pushed forward, and then cold hands grabbed her wrists. She screamed. Nyah struggled against the hands. They tightened, burning her skin. "Stay," the voice commanded. She kicked, thrashed, fought. The temple was right there. If she could just reach it. Nyah bit her lip and lunged forward. The hands tore at her, but she broke free. She stumbled inside. Inside, the air was different. It was calm, safe. The whispers stopped. The shadow could not enter. Nyah looked up. A stone altar stood in the center. Upon it, a golden dagger, and carved in the stone. To sever the bond, one must sacrifice the past. Nyah's fingers hovered over the dagger. Was this the way out? Outside, the shadow waited. You will regret this, my love. Her hand closed around the blade. A shock ran through her arm. Memories flooded her mind. The first time she saw him. The way he whispered her name. The feeling of belonging. For a moment, she hesitated. But then, she saw herself, trapped, afraid. This was never love. It was a curse. And so she lifted the dagger and plunged it into the altar. A scream filled the night. The shadow convulsed. It reached for her, but its form cracked, breaking apart. No! Nyah covered her ears. Then, silence. She opened her eyes. He was gone. Nyah collapsed, tears streaming down her face. It was over. She was free. The wind whispered once more. But this time it did not call her name.